attention to the destruction of the 3 World Trade Center towers in New York City on September 11th, 2001, and a whole lot more. This is 9/11 Freefall. Hello everybody, I'm Andy Steele, back again for another week to bring you activism, analysis, and a call to war for 9/11Truth. That's right. But when I talk about war, I don't mean shooting, I don't mean smart bombs, I don't mean all these uniforms and salutes. I mean a war of awakening. A declaration of independence in our minds. 300 million declarations of independence all across this hurt nation, suffering the trials and abuses of the post-9/11 world. Suffering that can be ended by acknowledging reality, by looking to the scientists who again and again bring you the undeniable evidence that you were lied to about what brought down the Twin Towers and World Trade Center 7 on that horrible day 11 years ago. That their destruction was absolutely impossible without the use of pre-planned explosives. And once you know that, once you decide to not only accept the truth, but also act on it, that's when the ink meets the paper and your name goes on that Declaration of Independence from this lie. Now, for those of you who don't know, or might be tuning in for the first time, wondering, what is this show about? Well, what we talk about is 9/11. We talk about 9/11 science and the fact, not the theory, not the computer model cartoon science that the National Institute of Standards and Technology puts out, but the actual fact, based on the scientific method and deep analysis, that the World Trade Center towers, including Building 7, were destroyed in a controlled demolition. All right, we featured people like Richard Gage and David Chandler and Jonathan Cole and others who have put the pieces together and laid this evidence out for you. We featured activists who are out there doing whatever they can to alert this sleepy public of this information. And what we do is we bring attention to groups that focus on the science truth of 9/11, and this includes architects and engineers for 9/11Truth. Okay, now AE9 11Truth, it's a nonprofit organization founded in 2007, getting the word out about this century's most important issue. That being what I just talked about, all right, that we were lied to and that explosives were put in the World Trade Center towers so that they could be blown up with all of those thousands of lives inside them. Okay, folks, there's no greater issue in America right now, and the world for that matter, than this one. And a number of people are doing their part to bring this tremendous injustice to light. Now, just a quick disclaimer, this is our own show, so the opinions expressed on it may not necessarily reflect the opinions of groups we talk about, and this includes architects and engineers for 9/11Truth. Now, AE9 11Truth, it just focuses on the science of the Twin Towers and World Trade Center 7's destruction and doesn't get into theories or blaming anyone for it, but we all got a voice, and I use mine when I think it's appropriate, and I occasionally make my opinion known, so that's the great thing about being human and being free to speak your mind, because I'm going to do it. Now, we got some great guests coming on this week. I can't wait to introduce them. We're going to be talking about reaching out to the young folks, reaching out to the college-age people. Before we get to them, though, I want to just kind of go over some news, 9/11-related news that's coming out this week. And if you go to AE911truth.org, you'll see there's a number of new articles up there. Now, the first one at the very top, as of this recording of the show, you're going to see a video that highlights the second half of Pam Senzi and Rena Patty's 4,000-mile bike ride across the country. We've talked about them a lot of times on this show, folks. Two great ladies going out there on their bicycles riding across America. I mean, just digest that for a moment. Just think about that. I mean, it's like Tom Sawyer in modern day. All right, we all dream of having these kinds of adventures. Well, they actually did it, and they were telling people. They're stopping at police stations, firehouses, events, anywhere that they can let their voices be known, and they're handing out copies of Experts Speak Out, and they're spreading this science truth. And of course, they're using the bike ride as the exciting, publicity-generating event to get this message out there, because riding across the country is a big deal, and so newspapers want to hear about that. And they want to know, why are these two women doing that? And that gets the issue into the light. So if you go to AE911truth.org, they got a great video, crystal clear picture, too, by the way. You can see that. We had Pam on twice here. Pam was on a second time to talk about her outreach to the FBI and the White House. So tremendous dedication from these two volunteers. You need to check that out. You need to go to journeyfortruth.org and check out their great work and support it, because the journey for truth doesn't end just because Rena Patty's journey and Pam Senzi's journey, bike ride across the country, ended. The journey for truth continues. The journey for truth happens on this show right now as you listen to my voice. The journey for truth continues in your voice as you speak to your colleagues, speak to your peers, to your friends and your family, and you let them know about Experts Speak Out. You let them know about Building 7. You show them that video, and then, as I always say, and you can never say it too many times, if you got two eyes and common sense, it'll tell you that fire didn't bring that building down. Now, getting back to the news, we also got How Did They Know? Examining the foreknowledge of Building 7's destruction. Now, this was written by attorney Dennis P. McMahon. Now, if you're a regular listener to this show, you'll remember that we had him on a few weeks ago, and he talked about his efforts with the NYC CAN petition. Really interesting story about what went on there and the work of a lot of dedicated activists trying to get New York City to investigate the crime of the century, which a large portion of it happened in their own borders. So you think they might have an interest into figuring out why Building 7 collapsed, at least. But there was a tremendous effort done there. Dennis talked about that. Well, he's got this article up now, and he's examining how in the heck BBC could report the fall of Building 7 20 minutes before it happened. Now, you know, we've talked about this on the show. Jesse Ventura talked about it on CNN, prompting the host to tell him that he's wrong, to check himself in a very snooty tone of voice. But no, Jesse was right, because that is, in fact, what did happen. And at one point, you can see in the broadcast when the reporter, her name is Jane Stanley, comes on, and she's talking about how this building had already fallen, but it's still standing there right behind her. Okay, what's up with that? You could see the building still standing. It was a live shot. I mean, you're talking about something that never happened before. Remember this, folks. Never happened before in history. A steel-framed high-rise completely collapsing because of random fires. And I say this over and over again. If that were the case, I could just start Andy's Demolition Company right now and just start some fires and get rich. Okay? Because that's, to bring down a building in that style, you got to plan it. It takes months of planning, like Richard Gage said. When I first met him, when I was first getting open to this and I saw his presentation, I asked, well, how long would this take to plan? He said several months, because that's what it would take. You can't set up something like that even in the morning. Okay, so it's the first time this ever happened, and she's reporting this in the past tense, but there's the building still standing out, or standing there behind her. And not only did BBC do this, but we also have CNN's Aaron Brown doing it too. All right, so obviously somebody jumped the gun in this whole elaborate show that we were presented on 9/11. All right, they served the pie before the turkey. So Dennis's article talks about that, and you need to check that out. Copy it in your blog, get it out there, get people talking, let them know, get them to ask that question. What's up with that, BBC? By the way, BBC says that they don't have any of their coverage from 9/11 anymore in their explanation. They said, well, it's not because of conspiracy, it's just because of, I'm not even going to say the word, well, I'll say it, because of cock-up. That's what they said. So they want to say that they accidentally lost all of their footage from probably the most important event to happen in the last 50 years of BBC's history. All right. Did you believe that? Well, and moving on now, we also got on AE911truth.org the latest installment of Adam Taylor's Debunking the Real Myths, Debunking the Real 9/11 Myths, Why Popular Mechanics Can't Face Up to Reality. Now, this is part 7 in the series, and it's about fire in World Trade Center 7 and this alleged column, and the column failures, the alleged column failures that the National Institute of Standards and Technology and Popular Mechanics claim caused the building to miraculously destroy itself. And I'm not going to read the article to you. You can read it for yourself. But basically, one of the first points he raises in this article is that the fires in Building 7 couldn't have been as hot as NIST claims they were. All right, and this is agreed by people on both sides of the debate. Just absolutely impossible. So not only that, but the fire that NIST claims started the collapse and the whole bizarre thermal expansion process that they coughed up and dusted off to sell this fire story had actually burned out in the area of the collapse more than an hour before the collapse happened. So, burned out, how could it cause the collapse? Well, yeah, it's basic common sense. It's lost in the people selling this, but this audience understands that. So, it could not have caused this to happen. As Taylor writes, and this is his words, it could not, therefore, have caused the collapse at 5:20 p.m. as NIST claims. It was gone. All right, and then the article, he goes on to point out all the manipulation of data done by NIST to peddle this story they're selling to the American public. And again, you can read it for yourself at AE911truth.org. Show it to your friends. Show Jim Meigs at Popular Mechanics. Send it to him, all right? Send it to the History Channel, all right? Tell them to go back to the drawing board on their analysis of 9/11, and maybe they can stick to their ice road truckers and their grainy pictures of World War II in color footage, all right? Because, I mean, again, they're going to focus on straw man argument. That was the whole entire hit piece that they put out a few years ago. All right, so yeah, send it to them, and I'm serious. I'm not just saying this for rhetorical purposes. Confront them. But if they're ever speaking at an event or somebody from the History Channel, go into the History Channel's office and show them these articles. Ask to speak to someone. Call them on the phone, all right? Because they need to hear from you. They need to know that you're not buying it, that you're not swallowing this rancid pig meat that they want to shove down your throat and tell you that it's chocolate fudge or something nice. All right, it's lies. It's a cover-up. So those are some of the great articles you can look at AE911truth.org. Check it out. And also, too, if you want to sign the petition, you can do it as an architect or an engineer. We check out your credentials, and then they'll put you up. Or if you want to do it as an other supporter, you can do that as well. So before we get to our guests for this week, what we're going to do, this is the same thing we do every week. We take about 10 seconds of silence to remember the victims of 9/11 and their families and everybody who has suffered as a result of this whole staged event. And this includes the soldiers who have died as pawns in this government's war of terror on the world, as well as the people in other nations who were its targets. So we're going to do that 10 seconds of silence right now. Okay. So, like we say every week, folks, we do this to keep ourselves focused. I think about the families seeking justice and these people who went to work that day not knowing it would be their last day. And all the controversy and trouble that was sparked in America because of this event. That's a casualty of 9/11, too. I mean, think about it. Think about, the pre-9/11 world and the post-9/11 world, and I'm not even talking about the loss of civil liberties right now or the loss of, or the loss of life in the world. I'm just talking about the divisions that were created, and I can't stress that enough. That is a casualty, too. The people who have been forced, America has been forced to face another issue. People have been divided over this. People who may not have been divided over other things. People who may have gotten along just fine had this controversy not come up. And in some ways, it's tested America. It's tested individuals within America, challenging their ability to speak up. People like Richard Gage, somebody that will actually put his life on hold and start an organization like this, the one that we talk about, and we're going to be talking about more on this show today. But it's tested them, and they've risen to the challenge, and some people have fallen. And unfortunately, what it's done, well, fortunately and unfortunately, I guess it's a double-edged sword, but it's also caused America to uncloak itself in many ways, as we see what our media is really about, as we see even good journalists like Amy Goodman cower from this issue, getting presented the evidence and sitting there just ignoring Mark Phillips, who presented this evidence several times, or twice before that event, or before that occasion when they put it on video that was on 9/11 Blogger a few weeks ago. It's caused America to uncloak itself, and it's caused individuals within America to uncloak themselves for who they really are. But the question is not, what Amy Goodman thinks. It's not what people on TV think. It's about what you think. What do you stand for? Because if you're listening to this show, you may be listening to it for the first time as somebody that may not be aware of this issue. But there may be people who are, and maybe I'm preaching to the choir. But the fact is, if you're part of the choir, are you singing? Are you getting the new word out there? What are you doing in this century's most important social issue. And again, I mean, the fact that those buildings were brought down with all those people inside them is the most important issue happening right now. As I told my congressional candidate that I encountered during the election, I said, all these other issues I don't care about. I mean, I care about them, but they're not as important as this issue here because they're all prefaced on it. So my question is, if I'm preaching to the choir, are you singing? And I guess I'll make that the question of the week. I didn't even plan a question of the week, but I'm putting it out right now, throwing it out there. If you're part of the choir, are you singing? Are you telling people? Are you talking about it? Or are you apologetically staying silent? All right, you're on the side of law and order in this. Don't you forget that. And I want to, if I can do nothing else in this show, if I can do nothing else in this part of my life where I'm dedicating to this, I want to instill that idea in everybody, is that you are on the side of law and order. You're not a troublemaker in a police state. You are the one who is restoring justice in America by talking about this issue, by getting it out there, by getting the information that AE9 11Truth puts out to as many people as possible. And that needs to go to the police. It needs to go to people in the media. It needs to go to firefighters. And and maybe they're not the strong people that Richard Gage is, or the volunteers that we're going to be talking to today. Maybe they're not, but at least they've been given a chance. They've been warned. They've had a chance to step up to the plate. Now, are they going to hit a home run or are they going to strike out? That's up to them. But regardless, you need to get the word out there to as many people as possible. Now, I guess we're going to get to our guests right now, and I'm very excited about talking to these people. They are volunteers for architects and engineers for 11Truth. On the college outreach team. Their first guest is Steve Cohn. He's an electrical engineer who lives in Tempe, Arizona, and he joined AE9 11Truth volunteer team in August of 2011 to be part of its 10th anniversary action team. I remember that. And he has been with the college outreach team, or he's been the college outreach team leader for over a year now, along with Pamela Senzi. He's been an organizer for the Phoenix Action Group, and we're going to hear his story, and he's going to be telling us how you can spread the truth on the campus of where you went to college or any school near you. And our other guest is Mike Figa. He's a biomedical engineer from Boston. He became active with AE9 11Truth in the last 2 years. And again, his focus is on college outreach and grassroots 9/11 education, because that is really where the pressure is going to be put up. It's going to be from the grassroots, becoming a big slab under the feet of these people trying to squelch down this lie. So that is absolutely where all of our focuses need to be. Steve, Mike, welcome to 9/11 Freefall.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks so much for having us.
Yep, thank you very much.
Now, I'm just going to ask you guys here, and this is kind of a tradition, because everybody, we like to know kind of what woke people up. So, Steve and then Mike, tell us just quickly about your own story. How did you come across this information? What made you decide to come out and do something about it?
Yeah, sure. Well, I was in the dark for a long time, actually, until 2006. I believe, when I first saw the Zeitgeist movie. And a friend made me watch that, and I found it definitely really eye-opening. And as the more I looked into it, the more I realized that all of the science was basically misleading the whole time, and that the actual hard evidence points to no possibility other than controlled demolition. So for me, it took a few years to let it sink in. I tried to tell my friends about it, and my family, of course. And then around the 10-year anniversary, just over a year ago, I said, you know what? I can't believe 10 years later this crime has still been not investigated properly, to say the least. And so at some point, I felt compelled that I needed to be the one to get out and join an organization such as Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth in order to help get the word out, because it's just way easier when you feel like you're part of a team as opposed to just out there on your own on an island. And so, because having an engineering background, AE9 11Truth was the easy choice for me, especially since they're also the largest and most organized as well. So I started about around September 11th of a year ago, and said that I was interested in college outreach and that I had some free time each week that I could dedicate to this. And so Richard Gage asked me to if I would be the team leader, and so I accepted. And now we have a pretty large team, including Michael Figa, who's a regular volunteer with us, and we're leading several projects for us right now. So I'd like to introduce him at this time.
Yep. Thank you, Steve. My story of coming to 9/11Truth, I guess right after the events, I knew it was a pre-canned agenda, essentially, based on lies, but I didn't understand the events. So I was largely resisting the Iraq War. I was in that Washington, D.C. protest where so many showed up in advance of the war because we all knew it was being cooked. The intelligence and everything was really just a lie. But I didn't really question the events. Over the years, some people mentioned it to me, and I watched Loose Change and some other things. And I always thought Dick Cheney or some of the other characters associated with the Bush administration could have let it happen on purpose, but it seemed kind of immaterial, and I focused on the agenda. But I guess in early 2011, I was actually traveling the world. I was living with family in Tel Aviv for a few months, and I was living in the West Bank, occupied West Bank in Palestine. And I just started to realize how propagandized we really could be and how disingenuous the mainstream media could be. And I was looking into some history within that region. A lot of events, of course, occur in the Middle East. And that's when I realized it wasn't let it happen on purpose, possibly. It was a pure false flag event, top down, everything. So when I returned from that trip, I had to become active, and eventually I came across what I found to be the best material, which is Architects and Engineers for 9/11Truth. I was really into the blueprint for truth. Expert Speak Out had not been created yet, and that was my key hook to try to tell people about 9/11. Show them WTC-7, show them all the signs of controlled demolition. And through that, I started working with people in Boston. And we have some of the older 9/11Truth members in Boston. And, of course, when Expert Speak Out came out, I helped promote the event. And that's when I met Richard and happily got involved with the organization. And I agree with what Steve said. It feels much better to work with a group and do something because for months I was just taking in the information, but you feel impotent and you don't feel like you're actually doing anything. And I think that's the key. Even if you're not active with an organization, you've got to get the best resources that you have and email your friends and family. You might get silence back. You might get a little bit of a discussion. Be respectful. But I think when you ping your friends and family and coworkers, you plant seeds. So there's a lot of people who question 9/11, but most of them, like you were saying, are quiet about it. And the more we just open our mouths, the more people will realize I have 4 friends or 3 friends who were either questioning the events or sure that it was a false flag. So I agree. We should be singing, not just staying quiet in the quiet.
Absolutely. And I just want to parrot what you're saying. And obviously, it is better to work in a group. And I was operating solo until I came to AE 9/11Truth, and I found that I've been able to get a lot more done and just working and get more input from people. And, about planting seeds, I mean, absolutely. And then the thing is, too, we talk about 9/11. Obviously, there's a lot of issues going on right now in the world, but you put this in this reality in somebody's mind, and then some other issue comes up, they may they may not go along with that, whatever it may be. If it's prefaced on 9/11, the whole war of terror, the loss of civil liberties, there may be some new development that comes along that, because somebody's woken to 9/11, they may not be out there talking about it, but because that's in their brain, they may not go along with something else. So when you plant seeds, it's not even necessarily something that's going to translate into 9/11 truth, but it could translate into other great things. So I just wanted to throw my own 2 cents in on that. Now, Steve, first I'm going to ask you now, because there's a lot of groups that AE 9/11 Truth has. They got a writing team, public access team, congressional outreach, tons of them. We've listed them before on the show. Why did you pick the college outreach team, and how did you get to be appointed team leader for this important project?
Oh, well, actually, when I joined the team around the anniversary of last year, there were a lot of talk about trying to form a college outreach team, only basically was lacking a leader, someone who would commit a certain amount of time to organizing the team. And I mentioned that I live near one of the biggest colleges in the country here at ASU, and surrounded by college students all the time, and that I had some free time, and so he asked me if I would lead the college outreach team. Basically, to start out with, it required me forming the team and calling people to get them interested, so that the team could grow and eventually be productive. And it's just a huge learning process. I'm thrilled to have the opportunity and to join at the right time when the position was available. And I'm also thrilled to have guys like Mike Figa and so many other volunteers on our team who are really committed to helping to get this information out on the college campuses.
So Mike, why are you drawn to college outreach? Why do you think that area of 9/11 Truth is so important?
Yeah, I think it's a great platform. I'm in Boston, and we have so many colleges, and I see so many speakers essentially come through this city, and they're generally hosted at colleges. So I feel like that's the next generation of people who need to understand 9/11 Truth and will carry it on as we go forward. But also I think they're key because they can bring speakers like Richard Gage or whoever it may be. So I think it's one of the most fertile grounds for us to work on. It's tough because there's complacency or an apolitical nature to a lot of the college students, but we got to find the ones who care about their future. And I'm a little bit surprised that more of them don't feel that their future is really in question due to American policy, and 9/11 is the key to the disastrous policies which are affecting them. So I think it's just a key area to focus on.
Well, absolutely, and in our correspondence, I believe it was with Steve, but you mentioned about how a lot of movements have come out of the college age people, Steve, and the anti-war movement was largely college age group of people back in the 60s, and I remember this from when I went to college, and something just my own personal observation, because I'm 33 now, but I remember like in college, you've got a lot of energy, you've got a lot of of yourself to give to something. Now, in a lot of cases, that you see with the MTV stuff and all of that, you see college age people channeling it into silly things, okay? But in a lot of cases too, a lot of the most politically active and a lot of the most excited and people who think they can change the world are in the college ages. So this is the energy that you got to tap into. And I'm not saying that you get older and you stop caring about things or that you stop that you have no more energy anymore, but things change within you, and this is the age that we need to reach, and it's because of the reasons Mike just said before, is because this is the next generation coming up. These are the people who are going to be making the decisions for us old folks someday, but they're also the people that are going to be filling in positions as the people who have created a lot of the problems in this society move out. As they move into retirement, those jobs are going to be filled by these folks coming in, and again, planting seeds. Even if they don't become a diehard 9/11 Truth activist, it's still in their brain. So if something else like this ever happens again, well, they'll question it more. That's the hope, at least. And so I mean, yeah, absolutely. I agree with you guys 100%, and this is why college outreach is important. This is why I have you guys on the show. Now, Steve, college outreach team, what do you guys, like, what is the college outreach team? Would you describe, like, the kind of work that you guys do?
Sure. Basically, we try to help students to form student clubs on campus. And one of the ways we do that is by hanging posters and passing out flyers on campus in order to raise awareness, and also just any type of event, having any type of outreach event, we target students and try to especially get their attention. Also, right now we have a major project, which is a college speaking tour with Richard Gage. He'd like to go around the country to speak at dozens of colleges in this coming fall semester. So starting in this coming September, and we're taking bookings now. And the college outreach team supports him in his presentations when he does go to speak at universities. We also do follow-up contact with students and professors that attend his lectures, and we coordinate with the campus activities directors to try to get Richard Gage bookings, which also helps with fundraising as well.
It's really interesting because, we're talking about college now, and my brain is going back to college days. And I remember, one thing I remember of being in college, and obviously this may not apply to everybody, but it applies to a lot of people, is that you're very poor in college, and if a speaker comes to the campus, a lot of times you'll just go to them because it's just something interesting to do. It's one of the reasons that I showed up at the Al Sharpton speak. I wasn't into any of his issues. It was just interesting to go listen to it. So, bringing Richard to all these different places to get him to talk about, the destruction of the Twin Towers and World Trade Center 7. Someone might be interested to go listen to the 9/11 conspiracy guy. And that's not a term I'm using, but that's a term that's kind of, because that's kind of like in the consciousness being put out there by the media, but then they'll go and listen to him and realize, hey, there's something about this. And so you are definitely going to attract a lot of people.
Actually, Andy, if I could say something, we've already had many. Richard Gage has already been on several college campuses in the United States as well as overseas. I know in one of your shows recently you talked about the conference for global social responsibility in St. Cloud, Minnesota. He was the lead speaker there, and that was at St. Cloud State University, and so he's already done a lot of speaking on college campuses, and there's been several other events, such as the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga, which had a debate, a professor panel of 4 members from different universities in Tennessee, and they debated the scientific evidence of 9/11, which was a breakthrough. And there's a news article on AE911truth.org about that as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, Richard's been touring for years, and I talk in the future tense just to stress how important this work is, and the kind of audience that he's reaching. Now, you've talked a little bit about your experiences. What I want to kind of know about, just in terms of, you talk about engaging the faculty afterwards, and I'm going to ask this question of both you, Steve, and Mike, just from your own personal experiences. What have you found the reaction of students and faculty to be to a lot of these events? Obviously, not everybody's going to be the same, but do you have some kind of personal anecdotes or experiences to share about what you've seen?
Well, this is Mike. I haven't actually seen him do a college event in Boston. I'll let Steve continue, but one thing that is difficult, even though he has had speaking events, is there's clearly suppression of this message, obviously in the mainstream media, obviously by the government, but even at universities. So the big wigs are generally going to submerge this and censor it. So that is actually where college outreach is key, because if we get a student club at a university, they generally will have the ability to bring in a speaker should they want to. So if anyone's out there listening too, I mean, that's the key. If you're in a college, you've got to start one of these groups, or you've got to reach out to those who you know who are college age, who have questions, or are perhaps a quote-unquote truther, because that is a way to get Richard in to the colleges, as it's generally difficult. But Steve, you can speak to the reactions on campus, I guess.
Sure, thanks, Mike. I spend a lot of time on ASU's campus as well as other local colleges. I have what I call a 9/11Truth booth, which I've purchased, and it is basically a canopy with banners that hang down showing the evidence presented by AE9 11Truth of the destruction of the towers. And so I'll set that up on campus, and we have an action group team here in Phoenix that several volunteers will go and have a bunch of flyers and videos available. So I end up hearing a lot of input and feedback from students as well as professors and people who work at universities. And I've noticed that the mood is completely changing. So every single time I go out, I get a more positive reaction. More people have said, "Yeah, I heard about that," or they come up and say, "I'd like to join the club because the buildings could never have fallen that way." So I can tell that even in my time of volunteering, which is just over a year, more people are starting to awaken to this.
Well, in terms of the general public, and I'll just throw this up, either of you can chime in on this. Why do you think that is? Why do you think things have changed? Do you think it's the time that's passed since the event, or do you just think that it's circumstances happening now or more information's come out?
Yeah, I think it's two things. I think it's time, as you said. We passed the 1 decade mark, sadly, without a tipping point. So I think the time has made people more open to it. And also our work, of course. I mean, over these years, we've just continued to reach out. So more and more people know someone who has questions about 9/11. And actually, I want to go back to something you said earlier, Andy, and just a general statement about what is success for 9/11Truth. I think we all should recognize that we actually have reached a level of success, meaning those seeds that we planted. And those seeds that we planted are not just in people's minds. I think that it has reached into respected, let's say, left media or anti-war media or critical media. If you guys want to think back, this is somewhat off topic, but when we had the Iranian car salesman who was supposedly plotting to assassinate the Saudi ambassador, everyone of note, I mean, we talked The Independent, The Guardian, and even some other papers pretty much called BS on the Obama administration. And I was shocked when the Obama administration ran with that story. I mean, the second I heard the quote-unquote story, you could tell it was some sort of setup, entrapment. Who knows exactly what occurred? But I think without our movement for 9/11Truth and those seeds that we planted, the media wouldn't really be able or even feel comfortable questioning, government stories like that. So I think that's an amazing success we have. And I think should anyone be attempting or thinking about another false flag, I think that they know that there are people ready to pounce on it. And that really comes from our work, because if AE9/11Truth and all of us didn't do what we do, they would be able to pass it over on us, essentially. So that's one level of success we made.
Well, Andy, I think there's another thing, too, that college students these days were at a totally different age than their parents were. And so college students today were 12, 13, or younger, and they had no exposure to the news, to newspapers. So I would say they're actually more open-minded to this because they're seeing the world more clearly, having been exposed to less media propaganda in their lifetime. And also they have nothing to lose by having an opinion. Yeah, often adults often feel compelled to stay true to their beliefs, and they're more set in their ways. And college is really a learning time for people when they find out young adults find out who they are and how they view the world. And so we definitely feel the 9/11 truth, all the facts about 9/11. It's the most significant event in our lifetime, and so all the facts should be well known, well documented, and debated and discussed.
Well, you're right about that, and I'm not going to talk about the Kennedy thing, but it's just an observation I have from that. That's something that happened before all three of us on this show here were born, and so we can kind of look at it more objectively. So when an older person starts talking about that, we don't have the emotion attached to it, and I look at that as a double-edged sword because. We can look at it objectively and come up with our own opinions based on that, but we don't have as much maybe passion for an issue like that because we didn't live it. I guess what I'm trying to say here is that as we move, and this is a testament to why we need to be urgent with this issue, because we move into generations who are college age of people who weren't even alive then, people who are like 10 years old right now. It's going to take that urgency away because they didn't live it, they didn't see it. It's just something that happened in history for them. So it's the absolute reason why groups like AE 11Truth and what you're doing with the college students is so important, and why we need to step up our efforts. I totally agree with you. Yeah. So I just wanted to throw that in there. Did you have something to say, Mike?
Yeah, I wanted to second that. It is interesting. It's a double-edged sword, essentially, because they didn't know the pre-9/11 world. So, yes, they're more open to questioning the event, but they don't realize the paradigm shift that occurred. I mean, they have only known perpetual war, occupations, and the way our current security state operates. So for them, it's totally livable. I mean, we always adjust to the world we're in, whereas all three of us, I suppose, lived through this transition, into this sort of collapse of civilizations and war and terror paradigm, and we know that it's costly to our nation in money and in lives, and in our civil liberties. So I guess it's a tough thing. You need a really politically astute person who can look back at 9/11, but also realize the paradigm shift, even if they didn't live through it. They really have to understand that it's a disastrous path we're on and very costly. And you're right, that is something we have to push on so they realize what the connection is, how important it is. They often think it's history.
Well, it's funny, too, for people like us, it was kind of a triple paradigm shift because you go from the pre-9/11 world to the official government's version of the post-9/11 world, and then you wake up to this new paradigm where, oh my God, we were lied to. This was a controlled demolition, and they really killed all those people. So, it's a real big, it really does a lot to a person's mind. And yeah, this was an absolutely different country. Quick story, I saw a video, somebody had a VHS cassette. Remember those? Somebody had taped of some, I think it was the O.J. Simpson. For some reason, they were interested enough to tape a segment of that. But you watch like the CNN updates, and the news was completely different. It was a completely different mentality where you weren't constantly being warned of some new crisis happening all the time. And so, a lot of the people coming up, they're used to this, and they don't know why it's any different. Now, Steve, you're the college outreach team leader. What can our listeners do right now, to help you out with the college outreach team and get started outreaching at their own schools?
Thanks, Andy. I'm so glad you asked. If they'd like to help us on a national level, volunteers could email collegeoutreach at AE911truth.org or sign up, fill out the volunteer form on the AE911truth.org website.
So that's collegeoutreach at AE911truth.org.
That's right.
We're going to get a link up to that on 911freefall.com. So if you're listening right now, or even if you're listening in an archive and you're listening 2 years into the past or something like that, you can look up this broadcast and go to 911freefall.com and see that link and get in touch with Steve here, and he's going to get you started. Now, it's interesting because, we were, and I wanted to make sure that we got that out there. But it's interesting. It's something I wanted to ask, and I'm glad I remembered to before we end our broadcast today. Colleges, they have all sorts of groups on campus, and I remember this from my college days. You got environmental groups, you got socialist groups, you got the Young Republicans. I mean, you got so many different kinds of groups because it's a reflection of the greater society, you know, and it's young people who are going in different directions. Now, obviously, there are probably some things that are distinctive about AE 11Truth from other groups, but is there anything that you find in common with other groups that you guys can for lack of a better word, form alliances with? And I'm going to throw this out to both of you, whoever wants to answer it, or both of you can answer it. You know, what does AE 11Truth have in common? Which groups do you find things in common with on campuses?
Well, some groups that we've had in common with are groups like Occupy the Occupy Wall Street or what have you, and a lot of anti-war organizations, student clubs have shown interest in our evidence, and the Islamic community or religious communities have also been especially interested. But that's a good question though, because 9/11 really does affect so many different fields of study. It has affected almost every major that a student could be majoring in. You know, it directly applies to what they're studying, how these buildings could fall and violate the laws of physics. And if you're majoring in political science, this has everything to do with you as well. How can you analyze the red team versus the blue team when the whole reasons for all the debates are based on this false flag event, which changed everything. We're living in a post-9/11 world. Psychology. People were traumatized on a national and even global level. We were all exposed to the tragic deaths that happened on 9/11. We've all been exposed to all the tragic events that have happened to our servicemen and women, and those over in the countries that we have been engaged with in the past decade that started at 9/11. Any topic you pick was affected by 9/11, and so it's easily relatable.
Yeah, I want to second what Steve said. Personally, I haven't interacted with the college groups yet. I'm kind of hitting the ground running now. But at least in Boston, I find that it's clearly non-ideological. We have Republican-leaning, Libertarian-leaning, and large, I think maybe more Democrats. But it definitely is non-ideological and doesn't even come up in our discussion because we realize 9/11 is the bigger issue which supersedes everything. And if I could put another plug in there, because we gave out that college outreach at AE911truth.org email. I don't know how many college students are listening, but there's definitely a lot of other listeners. And if you have a niece or a nephew or someone you know who's college age, this is where you could personally act as a college outreach member. Email us, email the person you know that's college age and in college, and that personal connection could go very far. I mean, you working with us could easily produce a college, student group, which is basically worth its weight in gold and will affect many people. I also have a phone number, I guess, if someone's in the Boston area or generally wants to speak to me or someone on the college outreach team. That's 617-299-1167.
We'll get that up on 911freefall.com also if you want, and we can get anybody in the Boston area if you want to speak out and start getting active. Boston, that was one of our historical sites for the American Revolution. Well, we have a new revolution happening. It's awakening. It's a revolution or a restoration of common sense here in America. That is, this is the rallying call for that. So I want to thank you for putting that out there, Mike.
Andy, I'd like to say something too. To anybody out there, you do not need to be a college student. Neither Mike nor myself are college students. If you live near any college, or if you live near any university or junior college, you can print posters from our website, which is 911explosiveevidence.org. That is the website for Richard Gage's college speaking tour. And you can print posters that you yourself can hang up on your campus, any campus that you live by. And you can also purchase flyers and do as I do and go to campus, preferably with the group, talk to people about the evidence, try to make personal connections. So, yeah, anybody out there can help on a national level, but can also locally go to their campus, and if you email or call us, we can help you with any activism that you'd like to participate in.
Absolutely.
And we need you.
Absolutely. Just getting anything out there, print out the flyers, hand them out, be a part of it. And, Bernie Suarez, who, normally introduces and co-hosts the show with me, was telling me, he's obviously not of college age, but, at Occupy, he's talked to people and, college age people. And, you get talking about this, you will get young people wanting to listen. I think that this culture has gotten so saturated with nonsense, with the absolute brainless garbage that they put on television, that now reality is the new cool thing, for lack of a better word. It's in vogue. And so, you get talking about this stuff. You actually start talking about how the world really works and about how those towers really came down. I mean, people will listen. They'll be interested. And, you will get a crowd around you, even if you're not a college student.
And Andy, I wanted to disagree with an analogy you made earlier when you mentioned stepping up to the plate, and you can either hit a home run or strike out. And I just wanted to say that I don't think there are any strikeouts. Anytime you go out and mention 9/11 Truth to somebody in a respectful manner, and you offer them some evidence to back it up, then you're at least opening the door for the next person who can come along and maybe be more persuasive, or just, a lot of us are more receptive after we've heard the story from several people that we trust, like you said. So yeah, there's no striking out. It's all positive. Any time we can raise someone's awareness, it's positive.
Well, absolutely. And actually, what I should have qualified that with, and I want to thank you for catching this, is the only way you can strike out is if you don't swing. Now, people, these journalists who've been given this platform, who choose to ignore this information, I think that they are absolutely striking out. They're standing there watching the ball hit the catcher's mitt behind them, and they're not even blinking because they haven't swung. But anytime you swing for, that homer, even if you miss it, I mean, you're not really striking out because you made that effort. So I want to thank you for putting that in there, and making that clear. Now, just really quick, I mean, if you want to be a volunteer for the college outreach team, I mean, how many hours does this take of your time? And I'll throw this out to either of you guys to answer. But how much of your week do you have to spend being a college outreach team volunteer if you want to do it?
To help us at the national level, we have a weekly conference call every Tuesday evening at 5 p.m. Pacific for 1 hour that I moderate, and Michael Figa is a regular member on our call. And so basically a couple hours is all it takes. Just participation on a phone call, some correspondence by email. And if you don't want to participate nationally but locally, it only takes 1 or 2 hours to print up posters that you can hang up on campus, and then it takes another 1 or 2 hours to go to the campus and hang them up. And even you'd be surprised and amazed how many students walk by and see posters and think about it. Even if they don't do anything about it, they at least think about it. So I would just say anywhere from just a couple of hours up to 20 or 30 hours if you're really motivated, such as myself and Michael. But that's certainly not a requirement.
Yep. And I was going to say, people can really give as little as they can, or as much as they can, even if it's very little. Not everyone goes on to the teleconference, which is weekly. You could literally give 2 hours a month. And with that 2 hours, if you flyer a campus, you could, create a student group. So really, there's no required minimum. And we're happy to have anyone on the team, even if we just hear from them every 1 or 2 months on a conference call or through email.
And just to throw that email out again, that's collegeoutreach at AE911truth.org. You need to hook up with these guys. You need to help out and get the word out there, because as long as you swing, you never strike out. And I'm going to make sure we get that in the video description that goes on YouTube, because I think you're absolutely right there, Steve. Well, we're out of time here on 9/11 Freefall. I want to thank Steve Cohn and Mike Figa for coming on here and letting the public know about what they're doing and these opportunities that are available. Thanks, guys, for doing what you're doing and for helping out the world, getting the info out there.
Yep, thanks for having us.
It was a real pleasure. Thank you.
That is going to wrap it up for 9/11 Freefall. Remember, folks, you can listen to us every week on No Lies Radio at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 Pacific. And if you missed that, you can go to our archives and listen to old shows at 911freefall.com. That's 911freefall.com. For Bernie Suarez, this is Andy Steele saying goodbye, and we'll talk to you next week.
The 9/11 Commission, which was tasked with giving us the fullest explanation. No, not one sentence in the 571 pages of the 9/11 Commission report even mentions the destruction of World Trade Center 7. Is this one of the reasons, perhaps, that Senator Max Cleland resigns from the commission, citing it's a national scandal? The investigation is compromised. How about expert corroboration? How about Danny Jawenko, 27-year controlled demolitions expert? It starts from below. They've simply blown away the columns. It's controlled demolition. A team of experts did this. It's professional work, without a doubt. How about Hugo Bachmann, Professor Emeritus, Chairman, Department of Structural Dynamics at Earthquake Engineering, Swiss Federal Institute of Technology? In my opinion, the building, World Trade Center 7, was with great probability professionally demolished. Here's a floor plan of Building 7. Now, to bring a building smoothly, symmetrically into its own footprint without falling over, what we have to do is remove the core columns, because what we want to do is bring the outside of the building in on itself. Now, this involves a high degree of precision that fire is not capable of, being an organic process.